Looks like we are live, Mr. Chuck Shute. You haven't done enough talking tonight, right? You needed to do more talking.
Yeah, I know. It's like I scheduled all these live streams and then forgetting I had I think I tried to get you on today and you're like, actually, you were going to be doing my show on that day. I was like, oh shit. So I did it back to back. But yeah, no, it's what else do I have to do? Like, this is my life. So here we go. This is going to be fun.
The
I don't
the
know if I did
key
my homework though. Cause what am I supposed to read books or something? What was this about? Or biographies?
we were going to talk about our favorite 3 books of the year, and that was initially led by Rick from Rock Talk Studio, who's actually under the weather, so he will not be joining us. But you know who will be joining us? That gentleman, Eric Senich. That is who is also joining us.
What's up? How you doing, guys?
Hi.
So, Eric, have you ever met Chuck before?
No, Chuck, great to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Eric.
Love the show. I actually discovered your show because of our man right here, Darren.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember listening when you were on the DLR cast.
That was fun.
Yeah,
that was cool.
You two, besides being great people who I enjoy the programs of, are amongst the most supportive people of me the past couple of years. So
Cool.
Thank you both for that. But Eric, I have to ask you, and putting you on the spot right here.
Yeah.
I just started getting tweeted at by a Twitter handle. I don't know if my phone's going to pick it up now. It's a glare. David Lee Roth News Desk at Roth News Desk on Twitter. Is that you going solo?
No. No, this is serious. Is this a brand new website?
I don't know. I don't think that this is Dave's team reaching out to me. If anything, Dave's team would be sending me letter bombs, not tweets.
Well, rothnewsdesk.com, huh? All right.
Well, connecting all the dots here. Chuck, big fan of your show, the Chuck Shute Show. Eric, I think I first encountered you because of Van Halen News Desk, but Booked on Rock, your podcast has been growing and growing and growing. You are starting to get some of the exclusives in a good way. Chuck also gets the exclusives. If there's Doc and infighting, Chuck probably has.
That's right.
Well, that's why I'm reading the comments. Somebody said I fueled the Doc and turmoil, and I'm like I don't remember what I did. I was like, I don't remember that, but okay, I'll take it.
Do you know, Chuck, this gentleman, Dave White?
What's up, Dave?
Yeah, I think he's on my I think he's on Twitter.
Yep.
Dave is a Twitter legend. I'm gonna say he's a blabbermouth legend.
Yeah, he got he pissed off Sebastian Bach or something, I think. I mean, not that that's hard to do. I think Sebastian Bach even blocked me, which I was like, I don't know how.
Claim to fame.
I've only commented nice things on his stuff, so I don't know what I did to piss him off, but
that is a really, really good question. Dave also then apologized for his typo. And then Dave, after that, threw a little shade at Eric. Eric, he has issues with because I think that's Dave kidding around personally. Personally,
listen,
his sense of humor is excellent in terms of what he's put out about the Osbournes and Journey. I think Journey is his bread and butter.
Oh, yeah. He was telling you message about Neil Sean and he does not like Neil Sean. I know that.
I think he has no problem with Neil Sean. I think Neil Sean has a problem with him. That's what I gather. And he's happy to keep it going because
he has some nickname for him, like Napoleon Sean or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't fuck around.
I'm a big fan of that.
That's how Dave discovered me, because I think I did an interview with Dean Castronovo. And I think that's how he found me. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Chuck, you may have had one of the last interviews with Jack Russell, right?
Yeah, one of the. I mean, there was a few at that point, but yeah, because I think I interviewed him in maybe February or something. I think he died this summer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he was struggling a bit in that I mean, I could tell just because I had watched old interviews, but it had been a while. I don't think he had done too many during COVID, so I think it was. The last interview I could find was 2019, and then it had been 5 years. And then I was like, wow, he's really aged a lot in 5 years. He sounded different. I mean, not just how he looked, but his voice sounded older. It was very kind of sad.
Yeah. And then people were saying, by the way, I just took my glasses off, so I got a good big old red spot right on my bridge of my nose.
I can't even see it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can't see it.
People were saying that it was amazing though, because he looked awful, but then once he hit the stage, it was like he just had a bunch of energy, like he could get out there
Really?
and play the show. That's what Eddie Trunk was saying.
Okay. Yeah, because when
Yeah,
he
he
talked,
still had the vocal pipes. It was
Well,
just
that's
getting him to
interesting
the stage was the problem.
okay, maybe speaking is different than singing. Yeah, because when he spoke before, he's like, "Hey, I'm Jack Russell," and then when he did my show, he was like, "How you doing? I'm Jack Russell." It was like an old man, like a
Yeah.
comically old man voice, and I was like, "This is so weird. Like, what happened to him?" And so yeah, I haven't read his book. I think he's got a book, right?
He does.
Yeah.
Just came out before he passed. I think he was out promoting it.
Yeah.
It's a shame, obviously, what happened in that Rhode Island nightclub, but it's a shame that Great White has been so minimized legacy wise, because they had the same manager as Guns N' Roses at the same time. They
Alan
did have
Niven, yeah.
exactly. They had all those MTV hits, but people pegged them as a one-hit wonder based on the cover of Once Bitten, Twice Shy. Great catalog, great singer, great guitar playing, etc. But they had that unfortunate thing where they had 2 or 3 versions of Great White on the road at the same time. I think they were doing that before Warrant was.
That was a little confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. I had Mark Kendall on, the guitarist.
Yeah, I had him on too. He's a super nice guy. And
Really nice. Really
I've
nice.
had on the new singer Brett a couple of times too, and met him. Super nice guy also.
Yeah.
Like actually had him on before he was the singer of Great White. He was in this like band called All or Nothing. I was like, dude, this guy's got pipes.
Right.
And obviously Great White figured that out. So
When maybe you had this, Chuck, when they set up the interview, they said, don't ask him about the Rhode Island fire.
oh, with Mark, yeah. I
Yeah.
think maybe with Jack too. Or I just knew. I was like, you know what? This has been covered ad nauseum. Like I don't want to, I don't need to I don't need to stir that up just to get a blabbermouth headline. It's fine.
Yeah.
You
Interesting though.
I mean, I probably should, but I don't care enough. I don't know.
Just, I can imagine, just in case, they always have to put that out there. The publicist has to make sure, because you're right. It was just, the issue was, it was just something that they didn't want to talk about. Mark Kendall's working on a book. He said he wants to put a book out.
Oh,
okay.
So looking forward to that.
Well, we were gathered.
He got sober, and I think that was a big difference between him and Jack. Is like Mark got sober and got his life together, and he seems like he's real with it now. Whereas Jack is, I think, continued down, struggled with stuff and pills, and I know he had injuries and stuff, but I think that really aged him, in my opinion.
But yes, Dan, we are here to discuss.
Well, in terms of books, we were gathered not just by Juggalos and Fate, but books as the few people who still read things and still like the same bands and want to read about those bands. It's weird statistically when you go, okay, this Van Halen album sold 10 million albums, and if Alex Van Halen sells 150,000 copies of this book, that is a success. And you go, how exactly does that work again that people don't read? But I think that we are in a golden age for memoirs. We're getting memoirs. It's no longer the most A-list people get to write a book. Pretty much everyone gets to write a book, and then maybe a second book if there's still some meat on the bone. Am I wrong, Eric? Is this still was this a good book year?
It was a great book year. In fact, the last few years, when I launched the podcast, I didn't think I was going to have enough to do an episode a week. And sure enough, their books come out all the time. And there's still a big audience for people that want to read about their favorite bands. So this year was, I think what's going to be my number one. But
we can spoil that outright, and then I could just talk your earth about how it was a terrible book. But Brothers by Alex Van Halen is your number one book of 2024.
But I'm going to tell you, my 2 and 3 might surprise you. So
okay,
the books keep coming, man. There's still a lot of stories yet to be told, and I think as these bands get older and they phase out, this is the period where we are in story time. Let's hear the stories. Let's hear how these all these songs were created, the albums and all that. So many great stories out there.
Now, Chuck, not to dox you or anything, but you have past or present worked within the educational field, so you are literate to a large extent. I don't imagine that books are your like number 2 or number 3 passion? When you say number 4 and number 5?
With books?
Yeah.
No, I like the Audible books. It's much easier for me to digest a book audibly. But like your book, I just read it because you said you had some issues with that or whatever. So I just read old school. Sometimes I'll read them old school. I don't really love doing that because with the Audible stuff, it's so easy to digest it. I mean, I could listen on double speed and I just fly right through it. And especially if I'm doing a podcast and I could take notes as I'm listening, and that makes it really easy. I'm reading my dad's book right now, and it's like he doesn't have Audible either, so it's old school. So I got to like read it and then put it down, take a note, put it back. It's like back and forth. It's much easier when you just listen and just take the notes as you're listening, and that's what I usually do for podcasts too. So yeah, I mean, some of these rock autobiographies are great when they have that too. Some of them I think they even put music in them and stuff.
Yes. Well,
Alex
not going into depth about it. Do you easily have a number 1 book of 2024? It doesn't have to be music centric.
Can I say it's yours, or is that 2023 technically?
I'll take it as a 2024. Okay. The release date was January 1st, 2024, which was absolutely brilliant because my publisher was definitely in the office the day it came out. And definitely everyone was covering new books on January 1st. It was excellent strategy, right?
No, okay, then that's my number 1. Yeah, that really was a great book. I mean, it's like I told you I'm not a huge David Lee Roth fan, but I'm enough of a fan that I was interested in it. And then you read the book and it makes you more of a fan. And some of it's just interesting stuff, even if you're not a fan at all. It's just interesting, like the stuff he did. I mean, the guy was one of the biggest singers and like made a movie and like all, was cameo in The Sopranos. And like, I mean, the guy had an amazing life.
He's one of the most interesting personalities in rock history for sure. Yeah. Darren's book was awesome. And I forget, Darren, you did an Audible version. Did you read?
That was the problem. Or he hasn't yet, or he didn't at the time.
I think I can officially throw my publisher under the bus because they haven't responded to any of my emails in about 4 months. They didn't send out the copies that were requested by Eric Martin of Mr. Big and Mike Tramp of White Lion. So those were blown opportunities. I don't know if they sent it out to Sebastian Bach as he had requested. They never arranged one review. They never arranged one interview. They never gave me a press recap. And also they sold to another company and never alerted me to that. I only found that out through a bounce back email. So love my publisher.
I've worked with this publisher and I had a great consistent relationship with them. And then the publicist that I was working with was no longer there.
Yes.
And then the changes. And now I don't have much communication with them. And it's too bad because they put out great books, including yours. But,
well, thank you. So to answer your question, I originally had interest from an old friend who works at Audible and they blew her off. And then eventually I came to them and went, hey, if we did an audiobook, I could get all these not A-list, but B to D-list people to read as the different characters in it. So Adam Bush, who I know you're familiar with, Eric, from a certain podcast universe, he was willing to read some of the voices in it. And I was going to get different comedians and actors and musician friends to do all that. Not even a response. So then the third attempt is somebody who's a great podcaster, a great guy goes, I'm thinking of starting up a podcast company. I'd like to put it out. I will fund the whole thing. Sent that to the publisher. No response. So it's like they totally killed it by all that. So that's why Chuck can't fully process it the way that he needed to.
Well, no, I mean, I learned, I mean, I still got the information. It just takes me longer doing it the old school. Whereas like if I'm listening on Audible, like double speed, I get it through it in like 9 hours or whatever typically it is for a book,
Totally.
And it's usually it's like a 9-hour book. And if I do double speed, it's like 4.5 or 5. So it's like, I can get it through really fast, like in a day, easily.
That's brilliant because a lot of times you have people who are a little older, and the older they get, the slower they are at the talking and the longer winded the stories get. So like a Groucho Marx book in his 80s would have been like 17 hours. So that would have gotten it down to 8.
Remember Gilbert?
Yeah, I mean, you could also
Gottfried?
go triple speed if they're real slow. Sometimes people talk too fast, and I can't do double speeds like too much. I'm like, well, this person already is talking really fast, but usually about double speed or time and a half is good for me.
But Eric, on the other hand, actually reads all the books when he interviews these guests. Kudos to this gentleman.
Well, yeah, I would say, yeah, I read at least a couple a week. I will say I read through most of the books because sometimes time constraints. So I will make sure that I at least read the bulk of it. I'll look through the chapters. If I'm going to set up questions, they're going to be based on what's in the book. And yeah, if I can read through the whole book, man, yeah, I developed like a speed reading type of thing that I don't know.
Did you
spend
buy
my weekends
Kevin
reading
Trudeau's speed
Kevin-
reading course? The guy from Natural Cures they won't tell you about.
I did not. So I usually my weekends are spent reading and setting up questions. And of course, with Darren's book, it just went by like that. It was just so amazing. How did it do numbers wise? Because I'm just thinking if the publisher didn't really put a lot of time into it, that affected the numbers, I'm sure. The sales.
Yeah.
Because you had to do all of your own promotion, I think.
Totally. I did. And like, I'm happy with the numbers. If you told those numbers to anybody who sold 1 million records, they'd be horrified and they go, that's it. I've shipped out more promos than that's, those sales numbers. Right. But for me, the victory was finishing it because it was the hardest project I've ever worked on ever. Sure. I could do another 500 interviews and related articles at least in the time that it took to write that book. That book made me go nuts.
Sure.
And
people have said to me, do you ever think about writing a book? I'm like, well, yeah, but I gotta have the time. Like I have a full-time job and then the podcast and then the Van Halen News Desk. So by the time you free up any time, yeah, I mean, kudos to authors like yourself. And then you got like the Martin Popoffs and the Greg Prados who crank out books and you're like, damn, that's impressive. That's
a book a month. Those people
yeah,
are doing.
Yeah.
But it was your number one book of the year, Brothers by Alex Van Halen.
I have it as my number one, just because from a personal aspect, it was just couldn't wait for it to come out. Yeah, I have, it's not a perfect book. I have my issues with it. I would love to know why the Sammy years aren't in it because we have not heard definitively from Alex as to why. Think about that. Everybody's assuming it's because of what Sammy wrote in his book. Alex has never said that. So what is the reason? Is it you're dead to me, passive aggressive, fuck you? Is it, I just don't give a shit about the guy? Is it sincerely the years with Dave are the most important or the most impactful? All we can do is speculate. Alex has never said a word. Is it after you read his book? Do you make that assumption that what's in Sammy's book hurt Ed and Alex being the protective brother?
Oh, I never
do
thought
not
of that
exist.
Before.
Maybe.
Wow.
We don't know what the conversations were like between Sammy and Eddie towards the end. Sammy says they made peace. We don't know what was said. Was it just Sammy talking to Eddie and Eddie just responding back like, yeah, hey, what's up, man? Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
I think we could go, to rudely interrupt you here, I think we could do a chat GPT of give me a conversation between Eddie Van Halen and Sammy Hagar 2019. And it would probably be something along the lines of, love you, brother, love you. And then Eddie was like, yeah. And then Sammy would go, bro, we should totally get together, bro. Bro, that would be awesome, bro. I would love that, brother. And Ed okay.
It just feels like there's something else that we're not aware of. There's two things, two things. Actually, Greg Renoff brought up this point. He was on the Van Halen 3 regarding Van Halen 3 podcast. And everybody should if they get a chance to listen to that. Greg was great on it. And he's basically saying he doesn't know any more than anybody else, but he's speculating, one, it's what Sammy wrote in his book, and two, the Cabo Wabo. Because all four guys had a share in that in 88 or 89.
Yeah.
The place was going downhill in the shitter. It was like you can almost picture like cockroaches crawling across the floor, and nobody's in there, and they just had to more issues with it. What did Dave? What's up?
I thought there was a different chat, so I made a mistake and I clicked the show thing. I didn't realize my cursor was over. I was like, oh no, I'm stirring up the crap, the cobble wobble on you. But
no, but so all four of them have it. It's going down the tubes, and Sammy says to the brothers, "Look, I'll help you guys out. Let me buy it out. I'm the one who had the idea. I'll take over." And then it becomes this huge multi-million-dollar thing that maybe they have resentment for. And their theory is that he intentionally did that. Did he? Who knows? But Sammy's a businessman.
So wait, you're saying that the Van Halen brothers were supposed to be included in the Cabo Wabo tequila?
They were in no, not the tequila, but the club. So the Cabo Wabo, the club. If you go on MTV,
which came first, the club or the tequila?
The club.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had it. If you watch, there's some stuff on YouTube from MTV when they were promoting. This is around the time of OU and 2, and they were promoting the launch of the club, and they were playing a show there, and they were all having a blast. They were all part of it. I think Mike too. So all four. Yeah. And then as the year went on, next couple of years, they're not making any money. It's a terrible investment. And Sammy goes to the guys, "Don't worry, this was my stupid idea. I'll take care of it. Let me buy it out." And they said, okay. And then the next thing you know, Sammy's now the next, friggin' Warren Buffett, Jimmy / Warren Buffett. And he's making millions and millions of dollars. And then he sold a tequila for what, 80 mil. Right. And then
I thought he sold 80% of it for 80 mil. And then he ultimately sold the next 20% for another 20 or 30 or something like that.
So, hey, and what's in the book? What's in red? Hey, there's some things that, I wouldn't have put in the book, and I'm sure hurt. I'm sure, again, Alex is saying in the book, Eddie was very sensitive. I'm sure that had to have pissed him off. Sure. That was a lot of stuff was private. A lot of it wasn't. Kicking the window out, Eddie kicking the airplane window out. Right. That was one story. There's certain things Sammy could have included in the book, but there's other things that maybe he shouldn't have. But it's out there. Once your book's out there, Darren, man, you're not taking that thing back. So
for the most part, and we are going to say hey to Josh. He has listened to a DLR cast or two in his day. Good human being with good taste, right there. He has not kicked any airplane windows out while the airplane was in the air. He has not kicked Sammy Hagar in the crotch during a live performance. He hasn't done any of those things.
Better be wearing a cup. Chuck, are you a big Van Halen fan?
Yeah, I don't know about big, but I've seen him twice. I saw him once with Hagar and once with Roth on the reunion tour. I would say they're not at the top. I'm not like Darren with David Lee Roth and stuff, but like I like them. Yeah,
formerly.
I probably like Van Halen more than Kiss, and Kiss I'm not huge of, but I like it. I like their songs, and I probably like a lot of the deep cuts more than the hits or whatever, just because a lot of the radio songs, same with like AC/DC, it's like you hear them. So I like the songs that are not on the radio all the time, but
get burned out.
Yeah. I want to see Sammy's solo band. I've never seen that. And I think they're coming to Arizona soon. So I might check that out. I know he's got an amazing solo band.
Best of All Worlds band. Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is I went to, when I was in Lake Tahoe, I was seeing this girl years ago, and I went to the Cabo Wabo there, and I jokingly said like, "Oh, is Sammy working tonight?" And then the waitress like, "No, but his son is. Let me go get him." And I was like, I was kidding. And then like his son came out and he talked to us for like hours, and he was so nice. And he got us shots, and like super nice guy. It was like, he told us some amazing stories. It was like really cool. I wish I'd had him on my I should probably try to get him on my podcast. I had the other brother. I forget, one of them is Aaron, and what's the other one?
Aaron is the oldest. Aaron's I think around my age, like early 50s.
Yeah. And then is he the one doing the music right now?
Well, both of them. He's got another son that is a musician.
Yeah, I can't remember. So one of them was the manager of the Cabo Wabo, and then the other one did my podcast years later to promote his music.
Andrew Hagar,
yeah, that's the one.
Also works with Steve Lukather's son, Trevor.
Yes.
which
right,
is
yeah.
interesting thing. And to take us off course here, the legendary Dave White is correct. I have many a time wrongly said A-list and B-list. It's A-leaguers and B-leaguers, and he followed it up. He did say Napoleon Sean, as Chuck earlier pointed out. And now
The readers and commenters are very mean to me. They're very mean to everybody, Dave.
they're mean to me too. They told me in my book like I didn't know what I was talking about. They hate everyone.
I try not to scroll down.
Yeah. Now,
like
Van Halen, I put them on the list of they make this good times party music, just like the Beach Boys. Mostly, aside from the crazy Brian Wilson stuff, it's good times party music with the meanest, most divisive fan base ever, which counteracts all the good times.
Well, isn't like the band politics kind of divisive itself? Well, it's like, yeah, we're having such a good time, but we hate each other. Like, it's kind of ironic.
Yeah. I'll say something happened on the 04 tour. Alex can't forgive Sammy for the way he portrayed Ed as a drunken disaster.
But the thing is, he's not wrong. It's just, I don't know. There's some ways that you can. I don't want to be like an old person talking young. Go spill the tea. Whatever old people are supposed to say. There's ways to gossip and not come across as catty. But Sammy didn't do it the right way in that book.
He knew Eddie was in no shape to be on that stage, and he still went forward with it. And he was going through a really horrific time. A little empathy, but look, Sammy seems like a really good guy. Nobody's perfect. Alex decided to go out on that tour. But Eddie was in no shape to be on that tour. Somebody should have been like, dude, I care about you too much. We're not going on this fucking tour. And you're going to get your shit together, which is really what Wolfgang ended up doing eventually. On the 07 tour, he said, look, Dad, this is enough. Because he was trashing a hotel room, and Wolfgang was funny. He's like, just sitting there like, go ahead. Where's this going to get you, And he kind of gave him the ultimatum, and Eddie did clean up. But that 04 tour, it was hard to watch.
I think that was the Hagar tour that I saw them on. I want to say it was 04, and was it 06 or 07 when the Roth?
07.
Yeah, so I saw those two, and I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the Hagar one being bad or anything, but
they had their good nights. Yeah,
okay,
they had their good nights. There's no question that they had their night. If you were following the band like I was and Darren was. You're looking at a different Ed. Eddie was like, from all accounts, just the sweetest guy, nice big smile. Yeah, he was like a mad scientist with his music, and he had his, I'm sure he had his battles with Dave and all that, but he was always, very humble and just like, what, everybody kissing his ass, like whatever. I'm just, I just love making the music. Don't kiss my ass. To then just being like really angry, and the 98 when Chirona was there, you start to see like he looked thin, he looked a little gaunt, a little pissed off.
What is he so angry about? You think?
Well, it's kind of complicated.
I'm going to butt in on that one, Eric.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I'm going to butt in because the Alex book kind of implies it. When you hear Alex talking about their childhood, these are not dudes who went to shrinks. These are not dudes who learned how to process or talk about their feelings. So all that trauma, all that PTSD, the book still doesn't seem to acknowledge that that's what all this is. Do you disagree, or you were going to say more to that?
I agree. No, I think it's complicated though, because you're talking about somebody he was a super sensitive guy. He was a sensitive artist, which is why the music was so amazing and brilliant, but yet he felt everything 100 times more than the average person. So if somebody complimented him, that made him feel uncomfortable. If somebody criticized him, that hurt his feelings. So, and Alex says that in the book. And yeah, they basically drowned out those feelings with alcohol. It wasn't like you talked about it. And I think, what the answer, Chuck, is what was he so pissed off about? I think by the time you get to he wasn't pissed off about all that much beyond the normal artist in a band getting pissed at his bandmates over artistic differences. I mean, that's what is happening with Dave. He didn't like doing cover songs. He wanted to have his own studio. He wanted to write the music that he felt like, the keyboards and all that. That's going to happen in so many bands. But when you get to the point when Sammy left the band, I think he felt kind of betrayed by Sammy, because their manager died, Ed Loeffler died, and Ray Daniels came in, and none of them were getting along. None of them were on the same page. Eddie was still working 24/7 in that studio. Sammy he had a wife. His wife just gave birth. He wasn't into it that much. And Eddie was just kind of frustrated by that. But when the Gary Cherone era kicks in and he makes Van Halen 3, first album he ever made sober, and it bombs, I think that killed him too. Then you go into the dark period. I believe his mom passed away too around like early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And he just self-medicated more and more. And then the failed attempts to get back with Dave. Like, how many times? 96, 99, 01, I think.
Yeah.
And
arguably 03, because the word is that the Sammy tour was offered to Dave and Dave declined because he saw what state Eddie was in.
Right. And the cancer.
Yeah.
He gets diagnosed with cancer, and then he's having difficulty with Valerie because Valerie's trying to get him to stop drinking, stop smoking, and he didn't. He just, it's fine. It's the pick. I used the metal pick.
Yeah.
And Valerie's like, that's all he knew was.
Didn't
just
he have like no teeth?
Yeah,
like
his teeth. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we don't know what he was doing specifically at that time, but it was bad. He was in a real tailspin. I mean, it was just like a whole different person.
It's just weird to think about the guy with that much success, arguably the greatest guitarist of all time, if not the very least, like one of the top 100 guitarists, success in terms of fame and also the money. And I mean, it seems like he's got everything and he's still miserable.
Yeah. It was a self-esteem thing. He never felt like he was good enough. I think, like Alex said, there, remember in the book when it was maybe around, was it 04, maybe around there, when Eddie was doing the soundtrack to that porn film.
Oh,
and he
have you watched the not the film, but have you watched the video of the performance at Ed's house?
Yeah.
Chuck, this is horrifying. This is horrifying.
He did a soundtrack for a porno? I don't remember.
He did. He put, and I'm assuming these are the songs that Alex is referring to, although Alex didn't say. But anyway, Eddie had created some music and Alex was there. Eddie puts the tape down, hits play, goes, listen to this. And Alex,
is it like bump, chicka, bump, bump, bump?
It wasn't. No.
Okay.
But Alex was listening, and Alex is just like, yeah, And Eddie's like, yeah, I bet you didn't think I could do that on my own, And Alex is like, huh? Like, you're fucking Eddie, man. You're brilliant. But Eddie always felt like maybe he had something to prove. There was a lot of pressure on him, man. All that weight was on his shoulders. What do you got? What do you got for riffs? What do you got? And then when Van Halen,
at least he never gave up. Like, I will say, I wish he could have been grateful for some of the things he did have, but then you look at the other end of the spectrum where it's like a guy's got like one like moderate hit from 1986 and he's still living off that one hit from 86 and has no interest in, and he still thinks he's the shit. It's like that's kind of the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. He didn't think that way. He was just total artist. He thought about what's next and he didn't want to look back. And him and Al were the same that way. It was just, it was just, what are we going to do next? How can we push it forward? We don't want to do the same thing as we did last time. They're always thinking that in those terms. And there's always music running through his head. He wasn't thinking about, this is so cool, man. I'm famous. I got tons of money and I'm living the life. I'm sure he had his his moments. He's having a good time, but it just wasn't the way he thought. It was not. Now with Dave, Darren, is it the sad clown? I always thought he was the happiest dude in the world, but is he putting on the smile? But inside, he's really a pissed off dude. I don't know, but
Henry Rollins has called David Lee Roth the angriest person he's ever met. He's gone on record and said that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and especially Henry Rollins in the punk world, you'd think there'd be a lot of angry punk rockers.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with Dave where there's stage Dave, which is very similar to interview Dave. And then with fans, he's able to like do a version of that. But the second that there's no fans around, it's just his staff, the anger and the violent nature of him that can come out. You wouldn't look at him and go like, that's David Lee Roth, because there's a perma scowl on his face. It's not this perma grin, big overdone smile that we're used to seeing. It's this frown. It's this temper, and it's bizarre. And it makes you wonder, is that the real person? Or is the Diamond Dave thing the real person? Or is it like Dice Clay, where it was clearly a character that became the person, but then he has to turn it off? I don't know. I don't know.
You know what's a good, Chuck? If you look up on YouTube, I'm sure Darren, you've seen this. Remember in '94 when he got the pop bust at MTV covered that?
Yeah.
Look at Dave's expression in that as he's walking into the police station. She's like pissed off, Just he's like, this isn't for show here, guys.
Yeah, he must have done something, because I mean, obviously they threw him out of Van Halen, and then Eddie was so pissed when they had that like almost reunion at the MTV Music Awards, and he said that Dave said something like, "This is all about me," or whatever, So it's like, yeah, I don't. And then there's that story I think I told you yesterday, Darren. One of my favorite stories was Sebastian Bach and Axl Rose had dinner with him at the Rainbow, and he's like, "Looks like we got a couple pretenders to my throne," and so things like that, stories like that, you hear that. Yeah, there was definitely another side for sure.
I have this feeling and theory that I'm generalizing on, and I can't prove, but Axl kind of wants to be feared publicly. He wants to keep you on your toes, but behind the scenes, he's super generous. Like if you've ever heard the David Wild story about the Halloween party,
yeah,
for the impoverished youth, where Axl had the adult-sized pig outfit Halloween costume.
Yeah, that was in an article that he wrote for Rolling Stone, I think.
I think so. He's talked about it on maybe Corolla or different podcasts over the years. So Axl Rose wants you to think he's this temperamental guy to be feared, and you have to fall in line. And then backstage, he's like this goofy guy who has a sense of humor, who's doing cartoon voices and buying everyone everything, whether or not he can afford it. And then you have Dave, who's Mr. Sunshine publicly, and then behind the scenes, everyone is really afraid of him. It's this like diametrically opposed thing. Like everyone thinks that they're going to get fired at any given second. But with Axl and the Guns N' Roses camp, everyone is very quiet. They don't blab about anything. Maybe it's NDAs, but they know that they're going to hold on to their jobs if they're okay. And with Dave's world, you just don't know if he's going to wake up and feel like jet skiing or jumping off a cliff, or you don't know what he's going to want to do that day. Almost like Prince.
But don't you think some of that is just people have good days and bad days too? Because I had someone on my show that said they went backstage and met Axl, and I think he had a big tantrum because he couldn't find a pen to sign this guy's autograph or something. And the guy was like, "Oh, never mind. Like, I'll leave," or something. So I think there's probably good and bad. And I'm sure there's people have stories of David Lee Roth being super nice backstage too. Or, it's like, there's probably good and bad. And it's like, so you try to paint a person a certain way, and it's like, it depends on which day you met them.
They're both, maybe we're all made up of both. I mean, it's hard being famous because you can't have a bad day without that becoming it's like, then you're just painted with that brush.
What if you had 20 bad days in a year, and then that's all people heard about on the news, and everyone thinks you're a total asshole? Even if you had 5 bad incidents, that's like, you're not even supposed to have any. You can't even have one bad incident, and then you're an asshole.
Well, John Lennon, I remember there's that clip on the Dick Cavett show where I think he was responding to, the Beatles are bigger than Jesus thing. And he's like, you say something 20 years ago,
Mhm.
you could be changed as a person, and people are still holding you to that quote because you're famous. So people just remember that. So
Yeah.
it's a tough spot to be in, to be that famous. And
I mean, that famous. Yeah. Because there's people that are at a lower level and nobody really is going to give a shit as much. But yeah, when you're that famous, like people are look at like Taylor Swift. I mean, anything she does, I just had my buddy on who, he covers the Chiefs. So they're always talking about Taylor Swift. I mean, so he interviewed who was it? It was like Patrick Mahomes' dad. And they asked him some question about Taylor Swift. And, we sat next to her. And that like made like all the, TMZ and stuff, because it was just like some obscure quote, anything about her. Like, I mean, that would be a hard spot to be in. Yeah, she has like $1 billion, but geez.
Yeah, they cannot.
Okay, you guys have sold me good days and bad days. I get it, but I'm not going to stop being afraid of David Lee Roth big time. That's all.
You're really afraid of him? You wouldn't want to like have him on your show or something? You'd be too scared?
No, 100% no. If Team Dave reaches out and goes,
really,
we'd like you to have lunch with him. No, absolutely no.
Because you're scared of him, or you think it ruins the fantasy of him?
I heard and saw way too much from people who've worked with him. It ruined it. It just ruined it all. It's almost like if you grew up like a big wrestling fan, and we'll get to Dave White's question in a second, but if you grew up a big wrestling fan, like what we knew about Hulk Hogan in the 80s and early 90s, we couldn't fact check anything he was saying. He was just like Stallone. It was that kind of a hero. And then you look at the Hulk Hogan of the last 15, 20 years, you're like, I'm good. I don't need to be in a room with that dude. We're good here. That there's just lies and tantrums and hypocrisy and all that. And I can't get behind that. I'd rather spend time with Don Dokken personally.
I wish we could go back to those days where I knew little to nothing about all of my favorite rock stars. I don't want to know. But here we are. This is the reality we're in, man. Social media, it's just everywhere. There's no way you can't do that anymore. But boy, do I miss that. The only thing I knew about personal lives of Van Halen members was that Eddie was married to Valerie Bertinelli. That's all I knew. I didn't give a shit.
It reminds me of the recent like Sebastian Bach debacle where he went on Facebook and said, there's a big thing with his wife where he says that his like he was basically divorced for like a minute, and then he apologized and said, no, I'm sorry, I blew up and I thought my wife cheated on me or something, but she didn't, or she just like went out to get some groceries, or it was something that was like really bizarre that you just wouldn't see that obviously 20 years ago.
Yeah, why you feel the need to share that with people, don't know, but
Dave White has been very patient here. The Mitch Malloy thing. Earlier we were talking about Great White, which Mitch sang in for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And was he bandwagoning? An interesting thing. Am I imagining this? Didn't he post a photo with Alex during the book tour?
I can't recall.
I thought there was a photo with him and Alex at a Sprinter van.
Huh. Yeah. Was he ever officially a member? No.
I know they made a demo or something. I think he has a copy of it.
Yeah. They got
that's all I know.
Just one song that we know of.
Yeah.
And that song was originally, sorry to cut you off, Chuck. That song was originally on YouTube, I'm going to say 15 years ago. And then I guess he decided to repost it around the time of Alex's book because all eyes are on Alex. But as you were saying, Chuck?
Oh, I was just going to say, it just reminds me of when I had Richie Kotzen on, who was in, he was in Poison, but I guess for like a little bit, like, I don't know, like a week or something, he was supposed to be the guitarist for Ozzy. And was he ever officially a member? I mean, he says that he was like, they basically gave him the gig, but then as soon as it hit the internet and people were like, heard about it, they're like, no fucking way. We don't want the guitarist from Poison and Ozzy. And so like, basically because Richie told somebody and then someone put it out there on the internet and then the fans reacted, then they they took it away from him. So he kind of like shot himself in the foot in a way. So I don't know. Would you say he was ever officially, I mean, according to him, it said he basically had the job, but he just never really got to like do it.
Now, this is a Dave White conversation. If you're going to go down the list of everybody who the Osbournes hired and fired, whether or not they got to be on stage. Yeah, Dave said it right there.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, George Lynch has talked about this at length, how he was brought on the road,
Right.
but not paid to understudy. And then they sent him home because he got a haircut or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, because I think he wanted to leave Doc. He didn't want to be in Doc. And then Don Dokken talks about how when George left, they brought in Warren DeMartini, and he wanted Warren, but then I guess George came back and said, "Give me my gig back." And I don't know. Like according to Don, he's like, "I wish we would have kept Warren. I liked him better," or something. But who knows what would have happened?
But Steve Vai, I remember he had 2 songs on the greatest hits in the mid '90s of Ozzy. Do you remember that one, Eric?
Stevie Vai?
Little our Italian guitar stunt boy, Stevie Vai. Is that what Frank Zappa would call him?
He's on Ozzy. He's on 2 Ozzy
the
tracks?
album, the greatest hits that came out after Osmosis.
I think they recorded
remember.
a full album, didn't they? They just never released it.
Was it the covers album, maybe?
Before that.
Wow.
I think there's a full album of material that never got released that was recorded, or at least 10 songs. It was a lot, right?
Yeah, so Vi was in and out. And then a lot of people just think that Zakk Wylde was there all those years, but there was the years that he was out, and Joe Holmes, who also played with Roth, he was there.
him.
Yep.
And we have official insight from the A-lister himself. I'm kidding. A-lister. Steve Vai, Bob Daisley, Ozzy, Dean Castronovo from Journey. Was Dean in another band? Was he in Bad English?
And Hardline.
And Hardline.
Yeah, Bad English. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who else was in and out of Ozzy? I know that Ozzy had wanted Buckethead for a little while, but under the condition that they take the mask off and the KFC bucket hat.
Yeah. Brad Gillis was there for the live album.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was right after Randy passed.
And Bernie Torme was in and out pretty
Mel
quickly.
Torme was working with Ozzy. Jesus
The Velvet
Christ.
Fog. Yeah.
Wow. God damn.
And then what about all the ghost keyboard players that Ozzy's had over the years?
Yeah.
It says Pete Way was in Ozzy's for 1982. I don't know. According to
He did one
Wikipedia,
tour.
that's crazy.
Okay.
Jason Newsted was in for. I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was a great
No live performances.
There's a great Rolling Stone article about band trades in that era, and it was like Ozzy and Metallica traded bassists because Newsted went to Ozzy and Robert Trujillo went to Metallica, and how Alanis Morissette's bassist Chris Chaney went to Jane's Addiction, and Eric Avery from Jane's Addiction went to Alanis. I don't remember if there was a third or fourth, but there was some GMs trading like baseball players and all that. I think there was just the really good one where Slipknot, Sepultura, and I think Suicidal Tendencies did a 3-way trade of their drummers.
Oh, this is interesting. It says Fred Curry from Cinderella played drums on Ultimate Sin. However, the sessions were later scrapped.
And Fred filled in a gig or two for Guns N' Roses back in the day. Yet the producer said he wasn't good enough to play on the Cinderella albums. Yet Fred is now scoring TV shows. So is he the most talented person? Is he the? I guess I don't know. And then we also got both from Dave and from Josh.
Skolnick.
Skolnick was there, and we've got some insight about why Fred was there from Dave. He said Randy Castillo had a broken foot. Got it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of people in and out of that Ozzy camp, but we're supposed to just think like, oh, it's Zakk Wylde and Randy Rhoads, and that was the Ozzy Osbourne band.
Yeah, they're like the two prominent guitarists, kind of most well known. But Gus G was there for a while.
Jakey Lee had that one album.
Jakey Lee, hell yeah. He's on 2. He's on Bark at the Moon, and then he's on
another one, a live one.
Yeah, is it? No, what's the next one that has Oh God.
I think he only made one album with. I think that they.
Hold on.
I
thought
know
it
he
was
made
only
2, but
made
I don't know if that
Really?
includes a live
Yeah.
album because he's
Oh,
talked about
okay.
how Sharon took all the publishing on the first one, so he had to try to renegotiate for the second one. But Dave
Oh,
White has that great fact. Did you know this one, Chuck? That Robert Mason was the 10th
Yeah.
singer for Ozzy.
Behind the curtains. Yeah.
yeah. That's. I think I remember reading about that somewhere. So wait,
Yeah.
yeah, because the next one after Bark of the Moon was Ultimate Sin, but
Ultimate
that
Sin.
wasn't.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's not
Jake's
J.K.
on that.
Lee, is it?
He's on that
Or
one.
maybe
Yeah.
he wrote the music. Yeah. Oh,
Killer
all
of
tracks written by
Giants.
J.K. Lee. Oh, I guess he did play guitar on it. Okay, for some reason, I guess he played on 2. Okay, but I
Yeah.
think Ultimate Sin, did that have any songs?
Oh, it had
Shot in the Dark. That was the
yeah,
one.
it's got Shot in the Dark, and that was it for as far as hit singles, and Ozzy even said it wasn't his best work, but there
Right.
are some good songs on there. Killer of Giants is cool.
Mhm.
What else is on that? Lightning Strikes is okay. The Ultimate Sin is cool. Let's see, Secret Loser. No, Never Know Why. Thank God for the Bomb. So yeah, it wasn't really, but Shot in the Dark is one of my favorite Ozzy tracks. That saved the album, really.
That's
And
a
then-
Phil Suzanne classic, and I think that's why Phil Suzanne left the Ozzy band.
yeah.
That he thought he should get all the publishing, but Sharon thought differently on that one.
But he came back with No Rest for the Wicked, Miracle Man, Crazy Babies. Yeah, and then of course the big one was No More Tears.
Yeah, that was a
And
big
after
one.
that.
And then he was like retired for like a minute after
Yeah,
a
yeah.
couple of years after that. That was going to be
Talking
his
about
last
Phil
album.
Suzanne?
Ron Nevison.
Suzanne, you're talking about a Ron Nevison, Chuck.
Oh, I'm saying Ozzy retired in like 93
He did, yeah.
or so. It was 92. It was supposed to be the last tour. And then
No
he's
more
like,
tours.
No,
but
more.
I think he really did want to retire. And then he just realized like, oh, I don't want to retire. This is boring. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think it was like a scam. I think he really thought he was going to just retire. And then he realized, oh, I don't want, and then he never did that again. I don't think there was ever a retirement tour for Ozzy. Was there after that?
No. I absolutely friggin' love Ozzy, man.
Yeah.
I love everything he did with Black Sabbath and solo.
How's he doing? He's never going to perform again? Is he?
No, he was at the Rock Hall. It was great that he was able to make it. He was sitting. They had him seated, and he's got Parkinson's.
I think it's called Parkinson's 2.
He's
I
got
don't know what the difference is.
yeah, like more than one issue right now, health wise. But he was able to talk. It was, and then they went into Crazy Train, and he was able to belt out the All Aboard, and then the Wolfgang was there. Wolfgang did Crazy Train. Who else was at that?
Maynard from Tool.
Maynard sang, a
Wow.
rare appearance by him, right? Yeah.
That's cool.
And Dave White mentioned a magic name. Sorry to cut you off there. Jimmy DeGrasso. He also had a little time playing with David Lee Roth that people don't talk about, where he replaced Ray Luzier. DeGrasso, wasn't he in Megadeth and Rat?
Yeah.
And hasn't that guy been in every band? Where is he now?
Good question. Now I want to look it up.
I was gonna say when Ozzy passes, dude, that the tributes will go on and on. I mean, that dude is so loved by so many people in the business and by so many fans. He's friggin' royalty.
Oh, I think he's Jimmy DeGrasso. You're right. Like, what, he hasn't done anything since Black Star Riders, unless he's still in that band. That was the last album he recorded, anyways.
Yeah, there's certain people who are under the radar like him, and then other people make up for it, like Carmine Appice. We'll know every album that Carmine Appice or a Peachy or a Piece, however you want to say his last name.
Right.
We know everything he plays on, and we don't know where Jimmy DeGrasso is. I guess it evens out. Oh, Dave White knows. He's in a cover band called Pet Rock in the Bay Area.
Okay.
All right. That's cool.
And that is in his buddy's band. So, Chuck, you will get in touch for the exclusive Jimmy DeGrasso interview through Dave White, the legendary A-lister, A-leaguer himself.
That would be a fun. Jimmy's probably got some great stories. Yeah, I kind of forgot about him. It's kind of, he was done. You're right. He was in Alice Cooper and David Lee Roth, Megadeth, Rat. Like, he's probably got some great stories.
He definitely does, but how many NDAs is he under? Because One of the things I unearthed tragically as a result of writing my book was the Van Halens had a lot of the road crew under NDAs. So that's why you don't see interviews with Kevin Dugan. Was that his name? Mike
Yeah,
Bass
Kevin.
Tech? Yeah. Dugan is
Kevin,
under an
yeah, he
NDA.
still is. He's still Mike Space Tech.
Yeah.
How do you police something like that, though? You know, like they find that you tell a story from 1987 and
Chuck.
they dig up some MDA that's in a file and then they sue you.
Yeah.
Or,
Oh yeah, Huey Lewis. That happened with him. He was not supposed to talk about the Ray Parker Jr. Ghostbusters thing, and he was on VH1's Behind the Music. He mentioned it. He got nailed.
that sucks.
Yeah.
But he's got money. I'm saying if you're just a roadie from Van Halen in the 80s,
Right.
and now you're like a bartender in Sheboygan or something like, and you got nothing to give. Like, what are they going to sue? You know, sue me for my $9 an hour salary? Like,
yeah, maybe it's more like JFK conspiracy. Like, suddenly that person is pushed in front of a train and you never see him again.
Well, I have to carefully talk about this, but a company that may or may not have fired me, one of the stipulations of me getting my back pay and my reimbursements and all that kind of stuff was signing an agreement that said I did not sign an agreement. If that makes sense. I had to sign an agreement that said that no one did anything bad to me, and I'm not going to tell anyone I signed an agreement.
Is this a music thing or is this like your insurance?
Allegedly, maybe sort of next topic. But the key is NDAs come in all special shapes and sizes and colors. But if it's too general, it can get invalidated. So let's say you totally break your Aussie NDA. And you had a really good attorney, they might go over it and go, well, this was just a one-sided agreement. It can't go on forever. They didn't compensate you properly for X, Y, and Z. This is invalidated. And then all these California laws changed within the past 2-3 years with non-competes, and FTC made non-competes illegal. And you could argue that an NDA could be a non-compete.
Well, like, I don't understand how you police it. Like, so let's say Bob from 1985 Van Halen tour tells a story to his girlfriend. They break up. The girlfriend then tells that story to somebody else. And now how do you go back and sue? Who are you going to sue? Like, you sue it's like 5 people later where you have to go back and backtrack it to Bob, or you sue the person who says it, even though they didn't sign an NDA. You know what I mean? Like, it's messy, right?
I think it's more of a way to prevent somebody from saying anything, because do you want to risk it, right? Do you want to take that risk? I mean, because ultimately it comes down to if there's a lawsuit, then it's got to be the judge to make the final call. So it's like, do you want to roll the dice? Go ahead. But it's a much better way of keeping people quiet than really anything else.
It's a good attempt, but I just feel like nothing is 100%. Like, I just feel somebody would talk and tell the story and the story would get out. And I don't know, it'd be hard to keep everything, especially if it's something really crazy. Like, you saw some wild thing. Like, I feel like, what was the thing with Led Zeppelin and was it a mud shark or something?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is that a real story? Is that they didn't have NDAs back then, huh?
Supposedly,
allegedly, it's a real story.
Right. There's parts of it that are true, but that actually there's an updated edition of that book that just came out, or it's about to come out. That's where that story originated from. What was the name of that?
Was it a Led Zeppelin?
Was that the Hammer of the Gods, or
Hammer of the Gods? Hammer of the Gods is the book.
Thank you for joining us, Josh. Thank you for the corrections, and
thanks, Josh.
You're a good rock soldier. And Carmine Appice, a piece, however you say the last name. I think he's one of the people that perpetuated that myth and kept that story going.
I should have asked him. He was supposed to do my podcast and he never showed up. They never rescheduled it. I was like, all right, I guess that was the end of that.
Just reach out directly.
Stephen Davis Starren is the author.
Okay.
Hammer of the Gods. But I think he's got an updated version coming out. I'm always checking the latest releases and it popped up.
But back to the NDAs thing, Chuck. I think you sometimes have to have something that's worth taking, or there have to be damages. Some of the people that spoke to me for my book were under NDAs, but they kind of went, what's he going to do? I'm not going to work with him again. He's not going to hire me again. Who cares? And
Right.
this is Swiss cheese, this NDA right here. But the people under the Van Halen ones, they are not talking. So, for example, one guy I would love to violate his NDA is Alan Fitzgerald, the keyboard player from Night Ranger, who nobody can really confirm, but is believed to have been the offstage keyboardist for Van Halen. Like, they've sometimes called him Ed's keyboard tech. But when you listen to the Live in Tokyo thing that leaked to YouTube from, I think, 2015, you hear keyboard that's not loops, that's actual jamming, that's a live person playing on a bunch of the songs. So that's a guy who hasn't spoken. A lot of these road crew guys, like, who was tour managing Van Halen the last few tours with Dave? I know Dave's guy was Todd Jensen from Hardline, who's now in Journey. Todd won't talk to anybody.
Interesting.
Under.
Yeah.
Did you see the story Mike Rutherford was just talking about?
That Eddie and him wrote songs together?
Yeah, in the mid 80s. Yeah, he's got it on a tape somewhere. He's got to find it.
That is a funny comment, Dave. A lot of NDAs are worth as much as a contract signed by Motley.
Yeah, right. And I hear Darren's working on an album called NDA 12, which I think is really...
You buy that domain right now.
NDA12.com. Yeah.
But speaking of Motley Crue, what was that thing the other day? Did you see what Nikki Sixx posted? He's like, I think it was his birthday or something. And he said, like, well, 2024, I've never been stabbed in the back as many times as I have this year or something, but didn't really explain who stabbed him in the back, or it was just kind of an odd post.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe is he talking about Mick Mars? I don't know. They got a battle with Mick.
But well, that's obviously one of them. But who else? Because it said like he's multiple people. It sounded like is what he was referring to. So I'm just curious, like what else? Who else stabbed him in the back? Like I don't know. It's interesting.
He's fallen in and out of love and friendships many time. And I used to love this thing that Metal Sludge used to post. That was a compilation of people's quotes from the 80s or 90s. And then you fast forward to them saying the exact opposite thing in the 2000s or modern era. So there was a Nikki Sixx thing of like, we really don't party hard. That's just an image. There was that kind of a quote. Bret Michaels saying that Poison invented grunge. He said that sometime early into the 90s.
Wow.
And by that he meant giving out the flyers to him. That's grunge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when people talk about Guns N' Roses kind of being like, that's like the bridge to grunge, because it's kind of true, because that the Guns N' Roses had that gritty, from the streets type of vibe. Matthew Tripp's ghost did allegedly stab. Dave's on a roll.
Yeah. If there were like a Tonight Show that had a monologue, but it was just 80s metal, Dave would be the head writer of the show. If only. You see this, you hear about this, but bring it back to the namesake of this particular episode, so they can't sue me for false advertising.
Yeah.
Chuck, did you have a second book that you liked in 2025? And it's fine if the answer was no.
Yeah, I had this guy on Zorro. He was a drummer for he worked with Lenny Kravitz and some other like kind of like R&B type people, and just like some random, and his story was really interesting. It's just like the story of his life basically, and how he grew up in like literally Compton. And I don't think his dad was in his life at all, but the mom raised him, and it was just, it's always interesting to me to hear someone beat the odds like that. Cause like statistically he should have been in drugs and a gang and all this stuff. And he somehow stayed on the straight and narrow and just worked really hard and started drumming with all these legends. And I just thought that was a really cool story. He was a super nice guy. I mean, I wasn't like a huge fan. I didn't follow his whole career or whatever, but like, he was a fun podcast guest, and it was a good book. They say supposedly they're going to turn it into like a movie, maybe, or he's trying to.
Did he take the Lenny Kravitz gig after Cindy Blackman?
Is that
Any
the
idea?
female with the?
Yeah,
Uh
who's now Mrs. Santana.
no, I think it was. I think it was in the 80s. Like, so he was like,
Oh,
and I think I don't know that he played. I think he only played on like one like track in the studio. He was more of like a touring drummer, I think. So yeah, but yeah, he said he's like friends with Lenny Kravitz and stuff, which is like wild to just be like hanging out with Lenny Kravitz and he's like telling stories like, yeah, Lenny said the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's so weird to just like think of these guys as just regular guys hanging out. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a fun one.
When you-
Yeah, there wasn't too many other ones that I usually only read musician biographies if I'm going to have them on the show. And so those were the I think, and John Joseph from the Cro-Mags written a bunch of books. I think I read one of his. I don't know if it was the most recent one, but he's an interesting guy too. If you've ever, even if you're not a fan of the music, he's a great guest to have on your show.
I think he just got a documentary that showed at Tribeca this year. John
Oh,
Joseph.
really?
I'm pretty sure there's a Cro-Mags one. Eric, I've only gotten to ask you about one book for this year, which is Brothers by Alex Van Halen. Do you have a second title of note from 2024?
Yeah, I do. My
2025 that's coming?
Yeah, my 2 and 3, I could have picked plenty of books that were about a particular band or artist, and I had some that I definitely wanted, and yours was among them. But I went with a book that you helped me set up the interview for, and that's the Randall Wixon book.
Oh,
yeah. This stuff I find fascinating. It's called The
Yeah.
Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing by Randall D. Wixon. Anytime you see a song in a movie, anytime you see hear a song on a commercial, there's so much behind that. There's a whole process. There's a legal process. There's who owns the rights to it, who has, this whole Hall and Oates war over publishing, these stories of bands selling their whole catalogs for one lump sum, who makes out more. Long run, probably the company that buys it. Short term, the band gets a lot of money up front. All that stuff is in this book, and you can add, Darren, anything that comes to mind for you, because you did interview Randall as well. But I just find that stuff fascinating. That to me, it's the inner workings of the music business that every musician should be aware of. But it's also entertaining to read about this stuff. He was friends with Tom Petty, and he saved Tom Petty.
To rudely interrupt you, Tom Petty, prior to his passing, because I think this was the 5th edition of the book, Tom Petty wrote the foreword to it, the third or the fourth one, about how Randall found an accounting error in Tom's favor and tipped him off to it when he was an MCA Records employee. And then for the rest of his life, Tom Petty went, Randall's our guy, just because he was on his side like that.
Yeah. He had a great story about running into Paul McCartney at George Harrison's Walk of Fame, Hollywood Walk of Fame, is getting a star, I think.
Yeah.
But he ran into Paul and he said, hi, Paul, I'm Randall Wixon. I represented George's music publishing. And he said, Paul just went right into the Beatles, that whole legal war that they had in the 60s into the 70s. Just that stuff there's publishing is huge. And speaking of Paul McCartney, he was smart enough to get into that whole business of, like, he owns the I Love Lucy theme song. And, those things are
Buddy Holly, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could be a musician with no publishing. You could be the most famous musician in the world, but if you have no publishing, you're screwed. You're going to have to make your money off of touring. Like Eddie Money had a famous story about, he sold the publishing to his music so he could buy his now ex-wife a home. And that's because they were like, why are you out there touring all the time? That's pretty much it. Whereas Billy Squier has publishing to all his music, right? And it's the most sampled songs of any rock artist by rappers, supposedly or allegedly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he makes a nice coin. He doesn't have to ever tour again.
I think the song Big Beat is the one that most of the people sample.
Yeah.
Chuck, to add, so it doesn't sound like gibberish, this guy Randall Wixon also handles Weezer, The Doors, and he's kind of good at handling difficult artists.
Mhm.
And
Remember the David Lee Roth story he told?
yeah,
What was that one? There was something about
one of his artists, he said, okay, well, you need a name for your publishing company. And he said, how about David Lee Roth is God?
yeah.
And they sent a fax to Dave's team, like, is that okay? And then he wrote back, like, God bless you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I think it's fine. But he basically, his memoir in some ways is about the journey to acquire some of these catalogs. Like to get the Doors was not an easy one because they didn't want somebody that was in Calabasas, something like that. They wanted a publisher that wasn't over the hill into the valley. And so he was persistent, and he said, hey, if I can't make you this much money in this amount of time, the deal's off. And he proved it.
It's also about, Chuck, it's like you're making a decision, like say somebody wants to sponsor your podcast. You have the ultimate last call on it.
Found it.
What if, oh, there it is. What if it's a product that you just don't believe in? It doesn't line up with you as, you know, from a perspective of who you are as a person. Like if it's something maybe that doesn't, whether it's of something religious or political or something like that, you know, it's like, he was advising a band, like, be real careful. Like, you know, do you want your song to be like on a Preparation H commercial? Like, yeah, you're going to get a ton of money, but now everybody's going to like recognize that song as somebody who's, you know, ass is bleeding.
Well, that's the thing. Like, because I had the drummer from Creedence Clearwater on.
Oh yeah.
And I think him and the bass player are, what's that?
Doug Clifford, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he was talking about how him and the other guy, like they yes to Preparation H, like yes to everything for the music because they need the money. But like John Fogerty was like, look, I don't want my music in like every freaking thing, but I think he gets outvoted for that stuff. So he was mad about it. Like, why is my song in a laundry detergent commercial? Like, that's not what I wrote the song about. And but I think the other band members, they did want it. So I don't know if they outvoted him or something. There's definitely a lot of drama in that camp. But
Steve Perry is he hasn't been with Journey in years, but he still has say. He's still part of that whole thing. Yeah. And him and Neil Sean basically communicate through lawyers. They don't even talk to each other.
Yikes.
But that stuff, it's you gotta be careful. You gotta be
I mean, like, what is the finale of The Sopranos? I mean, that like basically brought new life to Journey. So it's good when I said yes to that one.
Hell yeah. But that was, he talked about Randall, I think maybe he talked about that because like Steve Perry wanted to see the scene first. He wanted to know what is it that, you know, I mean, are they going to use my song as they're, you know, blowing some guy's head off?
Oh,
like, yeah, okay. Don't. But yeah,
I would just say, like, do you want your song in the #1 greatest show right now and maybe of all time ever? Like, yes, put it wherever. I don't give a fuck. But yeah,
I just put up an episode on Peter Ames Carlin wrote a great book on REM, and he didn't mention this, but I read online that Shiny Happy People was going to be the Friends theme song, but that didn't pan out, so they end up going to the other one.
And they also turned down the Microsoft Windows 95. It's the end of the world as we know it. I think they turned down $18 million for that. Friends theme song. I remember They Might Be Giants turned them down. A lot of people turned down that.
David Lee's Just Like Paradise, Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And Dave regretted that. I think he was like, yeah, I could have made a nice coin off of that. He said no, right? I think
his story in his book, I don't believe, which is that, you know, he was out and the management got a call and they like blew it off.
Right.
And that's like not how music publishing works, because the label would have had to clear it, the publisher would have had to clear it, and the artist would have had to clear it. So
I don't know why the managers would say no. They would just be like, oh, more money? Yes, we will do that. Like, why would you say no?
Yeah, and supposedly the Dave office at that time was the people who left the Van Halen office. Like when Dave was gone from Van Halen, he took the tour manager, he took the lighting designer and the crew, he took the secretaries, he took the accountant, and Van Halen had to rebuild the people from scratch. So what I'm saying is it's not like Dave had these yes people. He had the people that guided Van Halen through the peak of Van Halen. So I don't think it's as simple as like Dave's office. No, I don't think it's like that. I think that Warner Chappell, who might have been his publisher at the time, went, okay, this is a low dough usage, but what do you think? We might be able to get it a little higher.
Yeah, here's the Hall & Oates. The Hall & Oates that made news this year. Daryl Hall filed a lawsuit in November of 2023 alleging that Oates tried to sell his share of the company without Hall's permission. Hall claims that Oates' plan was unauthorized and a betrayal of their partnership. And that, I believe, has to do with, I think one is saying, I don't want to sell it because, again, then we don't have control over the decision making of who's going to use our music for what.
Yeah.
So, and Oates is basically saying, dude, take the money. Yeah.
Dave White has some more gold for us right there. Talking to the lawyers kind of thing. But with Oates, you know, a thing that you mentioned earlier with Great White stuff of like, please don't ask about that. I've interviewed Oates probably 4 times, always the nicest, couldn't be more pleasant. He's happy playing clubs and small theaters. He doesn't need the money. He just he's a musician and he wants to play. But the last time I interviewed him, this is before they'd announced the Hall & Oates split and lawsuit. And they said, please don't ask more than 2 questions about Hall & Oates. And I didn't know why. And then it came out a month later and you go,
I know why. Yeah.
Wow.
It was brewing for a while, but a really quick Hall & Oates thing before I let you guys either choose the last topic or roam free.
We got a third book, don't we? We want to name.
Okay, we'll do that. Really quick story though.
But yeah, go ahead.
Doesn't have to be music. I have a friend who works backstage at music venues in the New York area, and this is about 6-7 years ago. And there was a Hall & Oates show where I got free tickets for. Happily went to see Hall & Oates with Tears for Fears. I run into my friend who's kind of got loose lips about what he sees backstage when he's working. And he may or may not have been driving around Oates, or no. He was driving around Oates, and Oates took along his tour manager when he went car shopping. And the tour manager was going, there was a song on the radio and he's just making conversation. He goes, oh, that person, he's going to be on Daryl's show. And then the next person, oh yeah, Daryl was talking to that guy. And at a certain point, Oates looks at him and goes, good for Daryl. And I can't tell you how often my wife and I just like at all like quiet moments, good for Daryl. I want to see you both in your everyday lives. Just pause it. Good for Daryl.
Good for.
Sorry to talk your ear off. All right there. And
message received.
TBPC Terry T-Bone, excellent podcaster, supportive gentleman. He has worked with Hall & Oates. He has worked with Steve Cropper. Great people. He's had a lot of the same guests you two have had over the years. I recommend him highly. And he says Oates is by far the only nice one in the group, confirming what I'm saying. And Dave White for the win. I refer to them as Hall and Goats.
Okay. My brother Chad's girlfriend Brenda is a huge Hall & Oates fan. Like that, she just loved it. Just bums her out to see it. It bums you out to, like with Van Halen. It's just like, oh man, because they put on this image that they're buddies, and good for Darryl.
Is that a new Heart reference? Nice.
That's the one, Dave. That's the one. That's the home run right there.
Yeah, home run.
This is my brother Daryl. My other brother Daryl.
But cutting you off for the 8,000th time, Eric, you said you got a third book of note from 2024.
Not to rudely interrupt me. Right?
No.
I want that copy. You got to copyright that. That's my favorite. I love it. I'm halfway through the latest DLR cast episode, by the way. I'm listening
my
to
condolences.
And my man Steve. And my man Steve. Well, yeah, the third one is similar to number 2. It's a book I just read. David Rowell of the Washington Post wrote a book called The Endless Refrain, Memory, Nostalgia, and the Threat to New Music. It's about how streaming has changed everything, and not in a good way. I mean, let's put it this way. I asked him, what if Dark Side of the Moon was released today? What would happen? And he's not commenting on the quality of the album, because he agrees it's a brilliant piece of work. He goes, it would last about 2 or 3 weeks, get talked about by music fans on blogs on the internet, and it would disappear. Okay, that basically sums up where we are at, because when I remember those times where you really, if you heard a song on the radio and then maybe you heard a second single from an album on the radio, you just was like, how can I get this album? I got to save up for it because I really need to get this album. And then you get it. And that becomes a part of your life forever. Forever. We were around Christmas time. I got, for Christmas 1991, I was asking for The Cure, Disintegration, and I got it. And it came in that big cardboard, the CDs, you know. And I cherish that. I mean, that album became a huge part of my life. So many like that. Summer of '89, I had all my cassettes, and I'd work in this shitty elementary school, you know, mopping the floors in 100-degree weather. And I had Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever, and I had all the Van Halen. I had Dave, Skyscraper, Need 'Em and Smile, and Crazy from the Heat. So you make a connection that is lost today. You're not making that connection. And I have Spotify. I admit it. It's just a hell of a lot easier. The upside is I get to listen and exposed to all the songs I've always wanted to hear. You know, like just doing an episode on REM, getting ready. I can go to Spotify and I can listen to any REM song I pretty much want. I mean, maybe a few here and there that aren't, but you know, that to me is where are we headed? What do you guys think of where we're headed in terms of music in this day and age?
Chuck, besides vouching for John Oates' niceness per Terry, where are we headed?
In terms of just like, you mean like buying albums versus streaming and just
more specifically, like here's my issue. There isn't one rock and roll band or artist in the top 40, and that pisses me off.
Really?
Yes, because we want rock and roll to continue. You know, you don't want, I mean, rock and roll is not dead in the sense that, I'm sure there's a lot of young guys out there in bands, young guys, girls who are starting rock and roll bands. That's not the point. The point is it's not making an impact. There's where's the Guns N' Roses? Where's the Nirvana? Where's the Van Halen? Where's the Zeppelin?
Well, I think the problem is that young kids, I mean, there are some that are listening to that, because I used to work in the schools and I'd see kids wearing Guns N' Roses and, you know, System of a Down t-shirts and stuff in Nirvana, but it's less. And I think music is just not as important as it was in the 70s and 80s. Music was like,
bingo.
I mean, it's what everyone talked about. It was the thing. Now it's social media.
Yeah.
So music is just taking a back seat. I mean, I think music for a lot of people is just background. I just put this on streaming or whatever. And then the people that are making it big are like the Taylor Swifts or whatever, who found a niche or whatever. And then they're making all the money on the concerts and stuff, and they're not making the money on album sales. Nobody's talking about buying the new album and getting the physical copy of it. So I don't know. I think it's in a weird place, but I think that there could be a Guns N' Roses or somebody come along and blow things away. I mean, I know Ghost, we were just talking about.
Yeah, Ghost, good band.
They've kind of started something where they've got a pretty big following. They're not Taylor Swift level, but they've got a following. And I mean, a lot of the bands there's still bands that are huge and killing it, but there are a lot of bands that were from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. There hasn't been a big one recently, except maybe Ghost, but they're not huge. So
right.
I don't know. I think it's there's a need for it. I mean, it's kind of like reminds me of this is a weird example, but like, you know, like the Olsen twins, like they found a market, you know, they started doing these little almost like home videos for like girls, like 5-year-old girls. And because there was nobody doing that, no one else. So that's how they built this, you know, huge empire, because they just found a niche that nobody else was doing. I think somebody could come along right now if they were really good. If you assemble a superstar rock group, which I'd love to do and manage it, and they could take over the world, because there's a space. I know there's some people that would love to hear that. And you could get young kids to be a fan, and older people could be a fan too.
Yeah, I just think you need that. You need that band or artist where your parents don't want you listening to it. It has to be dangerous. It has to be something.
I agree.
That has to be like shooting Elvis from the waist up. The Beatles with their, well, in the Stones, especially with that crazy hair, long hair, whatever. You keep going forward, Zeppelin, on and on and on. That's what it's got to be. It's got to be something that your parents are like.
Oh. And yeah, you need a modern twist. I thought when I was like a kid, I thought 9 Inch Nails, I thought that was going to be the next thing. I don't think it really ever, I mean, a little bit took off, but I thought there was going to be some sort of industrial. And so I think that could be the next rock group, might be a little bit unconventional, and it may have kind of like a Linkin Park. It may have like a DJ or something, maybe part of it. And maybe that may be the thing that gets younger kids to jump on board.
Incorporate that. Yeah, that was a good point there, Darren. I missed the person who's supposed to that, but
we have to welcome Mr. Stefan Adika to this chat. Clearly has a lot of fans besides his excellent credits playing with some rock greats. But back to you, Eric.
There was a comment just before that about albums. I don't know if you could go back to before that. Here it is. Yeah, Tripwire. Yeah. So also, I used to like reading the album credits. That's again connecting with it. Sure. The first album ever I bought was Synchronicity from the Police, and I remember reading the credits and looking at the album art.
But now it's almost better because you can see all that stuff online, and I mean, you can Google any album. And I was looking up all Ozzy band members. Like, you couldn't look that up before. You couldn't look on the back of the album to know every band member that's played with Ozzy. So it's kind of cool that there's a lot of information out there now that wasn't available before.
Times always change. The business model always changes. And people like us benefit because we're able to have a show from home. Okay. Because I worked in radio for many years, and the only way you can get behind a microphone is to drive to the station and hope that the program director thinks you sound good enough. And you give them an audition tape after audition tape. You're not good enough yet, kid. Keep trying. Get the green light. Here, you have it all. You just got to figure out how to set up all that stuff, which you can do. And once you do it, you're the next Darren Paltrowitz, and you've got the Paltrocast. Okay.
And then you're just crying yourself to sleep every night.
Big time star over here. My God.
Huge, tremendous. And I don't think that any of us know the answer, know where it's going necessarily, but fortunately there are still chances to see many of our favorite artists. That's part of the bright side. And what other bright sides are there? A lot of our favorite artists still have archives waiting to open up. Some of them keep doing the copyright dumps every year to protect against the 50-year whatever expiration is. I have a feeling there'll still be some more good Beach Boys stuff coming in the future. There'll probably be some Kiss stuff for you, Chuck. There will be like Ugly Kid Joe archives, I'm sure, in the next 10 years.
I see that behind you. Ugly Kid Joe.
I love them, dude. Underrated band. God, I saw them live finally. Never saw them in the 90s. Saw them recently, a couple years ago. They came to Vegas. They killed it. I thought they sounded amazing. To me, it's all about, with these older rock bands, can the singer still hit the notes? And he nailed it. It was amazing.
I remember playing them in college radio, man. Hate Everything About You and
Cats in the Cradle.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap things up, Darren, is there any truth to the rumors that you plan on splitting up with Steve Roth, that you're going to go solo? Is there any truth to this rumor? Please go ahead.
Well, I didn't even get into the books that I recommend. This is one of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Steve's company put that up.
Yeah,
and I was on a Zoom call with him 3 days ago, and I texted with him earlier. So unless the public will pay me money to never talk to him again, I think if you want to crowdfund a don't talk to your friends anymore, I would be interested in these payouts. But until that happens,
because I'm not looking to start a whole war here, but Steve Roth, if you're watching this, that's all I heard. That's just rumors. I read it in the trades.
See, it's like pulling the curtain
back. Ego out of control.
Steve and I are very different people outside of having Long Island Jewish roots liking Van Halen, liking power pop and some of the same artists. Like
Cheap
his
Trick.
interests and my interests couldn't be more different. He looks for the kindness in the world, yet is following politics 24/7 and blogging about politics 24/7. And I couldn't care less about any of that. If we didn't have Van Halen and being Long Island Jews of origin, I don't know what we'd talk about. But
Is
we
he
get
the
along
good
just
cop?
fine.
You're a bad cop. Is that what it is? He's the good cop. You're the bad cop.
I don't try to be the pessimistic, awful person, but it just happens. It
Steve tries to
happens.
be positive, and you'll just be like, "Yeah, I guess," but I think.
Oh, by the
love
way,
Steve.
do you know, Eric? Do you know this Adika? This
No,
legendary
who's-
Adika?
what is it?
Adika was in the Eddie Van Halen backyard party band. He played that show.
Okay.
He was in the
Meaning
Starfuckers. That I think they did a bunch of shows, and then Eddie Van Halen's like, "Hey, why don't you put a band together for my backyard?" And it's pretty crazy.
So he's in that band that you've watched the video of that's
Oh.
playing Rebel Yell and Jump and all that. He's on stage, and he may or may not
The
have.
party that Frank Meyer was at.
Frank Meyer was there.
Okay.
Now, do you know Frank Meyer, Chuck?
No,
Oh, you got to have him on, Chuck. You got it. Frank is the best guest ever.
Yeah, he's currently playing in the band Fear. He's playing guitar.
oh, I had Lee
He-
Ving on from Fear.
And Frank's
He-
brother is an actor. He was in oh God, Clueless, right? What
He was in Clueless and many other things.
Yeah. Steve
Breckenmeyer.
Russell, he wasn't fired. He quit. I can't remember his film Crazy from the Podcast.
You never say never.
Steve's
No one has a
tell-all.
grudge with Steve except apparently me. I didn't know that. But
Steve's tell-all, man. I'm telling you, he's gonna dish the dirt. No, you would love Chuck. He's a great guest because he hung out with David Lee at his mansion. He was at Eddie's party in 04. What would that
03 or
have been?
04?
03 or
Probably
04.
03.
He interviewed Dave like 3 times, and just some wild stories.
He was
Okay.
supposed to
Yeah.
write Dave's next book. He was the
Yep.
singer of the Streetwalking Cheetahs. He
Yep.
was working for LeBron James's fitness company where he like directed stuff there.
Oh,
he
I
did that new
remember
rap documentary about old
Yeah.
school stuff. He has a lot of jobs that are not related to each other, but they're all
And he's an
super-
author. He's written a few books. He co-authored Monty Melnick's book. Monty Melnick is the road manager of the Ramones.
Nice.
Yep.
Sounds
Hey,
good.
you.
Geez. And by the way, longtime friends with Dweezil Zappa, and was like at Dweezil's house when Stevie Vai was there working on. He's in the back seat of the car, and Stevie and Dweezil are popping a cassette tape, and they're like, "Hey, give this a listen." It was like fucking Yankee Rose. Yeah, Stevie Vai
Nice.
like, "Yeah, I'm working with David Lee Roth," and Frank Meyer was like in the back seat. Yeah. He talked about, just hanging with Frank Zappa. Frank would just come out of his recording studio and have a bowl of cereal and sit there and chat with Frank, who was like, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, you'd love him, Chuck.
Cool.
He would love to be on.
But the story is, for some reason, David Lee Roth wouldn't see Frank for 7-8 years at a clip. And then he'd just be walking down the street and Frank would hear Frank Meyer, and it'd be Roth.
Frank Meyer.
And he told that story, I think, on DLRcast, maybe another show. And there's this guy, Carlo, who listens to a lot of Roth stuff. Great guy. I believe he's in Spain. And he went to a Frank Meyer gig, I think, with Fear. And Frank Meyer was walking down the street and he was Frank Meyer, but it was Carlo. It wasn't.
Chuck, if you watch on YouTube the press conference when Dave joined Van Halen again and Wolfie's up on there on the stage with him, Frank's, you'll see him and hear him. He says something like, what songs do you plan on playing, in the set list, whatever. He was throwing out a question. But you can also see in the beginning when Dave's walking in, he's like, Frank Meyer. And he's like looking at him.
Nice.
It's okay. Like Frank's like, I didn't know if he remembered me or whatever.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And to pull the curtain back, not only does the wife say "good for Daryl," but the wife often goes Frank Meyer.
Frank Meyer.
It happens. You both, I believe, are on the holiday card list, and so is he. So while she was filling out the holiday cards, she goes, "Do we send one to Frank Meyer?"
Frank Meyer
Actually happened.
Dude, man.
Nice.
Talented guy.
There you
Cool.
go. So Chuck, back to you here. Chuck Shute Show. What's going on? What's the latest and greatest?
Literally nothing. No, I mean, I have these live streams. I had you on, was that yesterday or 2 days ago? No,
2 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple days ago. It's mostly a lot of podcasters at the moment. I just wanted to do something easy to wrap up the year, something fun where I don't have to go through publicists and stuff. So I'm like, I'm just going to have on people that are my friends that I like chatting with. And if people want to join in and say hello and join the conversation, they can. And, so I got a couple more of those, and then probably going to take a break in 2025. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't plan on focusing on the channel or the podcast. I'm going to focus on something else.
Wow.
Hopefully revamp the podcast when I'm successful in some other way that I can put a little more money into it and juice. So I want to come back because I'm just sick of like spinning my wheels. So yeah, we'll see.
What do you think? I mean, can you tell us like what are you planning? Like,
I mean, I don't want to say because I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do. I have some ideas.
Is it related to your fitness journey? Because you've been very successful on that end as well.
No. I mean, I'm going to continue that. I do want to continue that for sure. But I want to try some bigger things and maybe related to entertainment industry, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to just try some things and see if they work out. And if they do, then I think that could be kind of like a back door into getting podcast guests that we'll see if it actually happens. That's the plan anyways. I don't know. I don't want to make any promises. So I'll make an announcement when the time is right, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. But in the meantime, we have a huge catalog of your stuff to keep enjoying.
Yeah. If you want to go back and watch old episodes, there's still a bunch of those. I mean, I'll probably still try to do like one a week or so. Just mostly probably just be people that I enjoy chatting with or that I'm interested in. I'm not going to like send out a bunch of requests to publicists and get ignored because I'm just tired of doing that. So yeah.
Jimmy DeGrasso coming soon to the Chuck Shute Show.
That could be a fun one. Yeah, I'd be down. Yeah.
and Eric, we've talked about the Van Halen News Desk, that is your voice writing most of the content, if not all the content we see. And Booked on Rock keeps growing and getting exclusives. But have I missed anything?
No, I mean, that's it. It's been fairly quiet with the news desk recently, but we're still there, man. We're still putting stuff up, and the Booked on Rock. Yeah, man, it just steadily grows. And thanks to everybody who listens and watches. And it's been a fun journey. I mean, I plan on just keeping it going. I can't see myself stopping. Like I was going to take a little break for the holidays. I'm like, nah, fuck that. I'll just try to get more guests, So because I love doing it so much. Sometimes I had a discussion with Darren recently where sometimes it gets a little overwhelming because I get like too many guests and I can't keep up. Like a full-time job during the day and then the news desk and all that. It's like, oh shit, I don't think I could do this. But that's a good problem to have, It's a good problem to have. So all systems go for 2025 with the show, man. We're going to continue with it. And I don't think I have anything really new that I have planned for it, just to keep.
How do you get the news? Is it just people giving you tips or?
Oh, for Van Halen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we subscribe to a list, an email list. So anything, like it just scours the internet, anything that's Van Halen related, whether it's for Dave, Sam, Van Halen, Alex, you name it.
So you have to search yourself. People don't come in and, hey, I got a good story, a good lead on a story. Right?
Well, hey,
I got one for you tonight. If you want one with the basis of Shinedown, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. You were telling me about that. Yeah. You were telling me about that. But we have an email subscription list, and so I get emails all day. Like,
okay,
hey, here's an article that just went.
Okay, nice.
So, like for example, the Mike Rutherford story that just happened to come up on a website, and so that I'll look through all of them because I have plenty of choices. A lot of stuff is kind of repetitive. But also we have people that, like Darren's huge. Like he'll let me know he had a guest on his show that talked about VH. Do you want to do an article? Let's do it. I have Greg Prado now. He's contributing a lot. He's a great writer. He writes for Ultimate Guitar, and he covers a lot of that stuff. So if there's something Van Halen related, he'll say, hey, is this VHND worthy, in the headline? So people are always feeding me stuff. And Van Halen's not an active band, but yet there's still, this year ended, with the Alex story. That was the big one. So we were on top of that one.
I need to check out that book. It sounds fun. That one's on Audible, right?
It's on Audible. That's that. I listened to the Audible version. I mean, okay. I have the.
How long? How many hours is it?
God, what is it? Maybe is it 7 or 8 hours? Oh, okay, yeah,
9 hours.
I got through it
4.5 for me if I do double speed.
You'll be done with it in I think 3 days. I was done, and it's read by Alex. I mean, it's very sincerely. It's not like it's not like a professional voiceover guy.
Do any interviews? I know he wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But he did a couple interviews for it.
He did NPR. He did CNN.
Anderson Cooper.
NPR.
It's only 6 hours. So I could read it in 3.
Chris Jericho. Rolling Stone.
Yeah, we put them all up on VHND. I mean, they're all there. There's nothing I don't think that we missed. And each of them have something a little different, a little cool, like Jericho as a musician. Jericho was he goes, my friends and I always talk about when you start a song, you just start in on an odd beat and everything. He's like, what's up with that? And Alex is laughing. He's like, I don't know, man. He goes, I just start whenever I felt right. So there was a little bits and pieces here and there where he'd maybe reveal something about a song or something personal, and they're all fascinating. And I'm glad that Alex did these interviews because, quite honestly, it's kind of like he had this image of I don't know, not that he's not a nice guy or anything, but maybe he's not likable. I don't know. He's very likable. He comes off as somebody you could hang with him. He seems like a nice dude. He like Valerie was saying, he's just very private. It's not something he likes to do. So she was really proud of him for what he did, not only writing the book, but getting out there and talking about it. Cause he's going through every day is difficult for him. Every single day he thinks about his brother. Every time he hears his brother's music, he gets emotional. I'm reading all this stuff down here, but he really is, I can only imagine because they spent 65 years together. I mean, they like most brothers, you see, you see them every now and then and you get together. They were together all every day making music, talking,
good point, yeah.
Arguing. I mean, they argued a lot, they fought a lot, and they got along just as quickly as they were, getting.
I think I would go crazy with anybody. I could never be in a band. I just don't have the patience to deal with that many people, 3 or 4 people every day. I would just get so annoyed with them.
Especially in the early days when you're on a little tiny bus or whatever. It's not like you can,
sounds like a nightmare.
Space or distance. Like in the early days, Van Halen, they were talking about, they traveled around in an old bus where they were basically sleeping under. Do you remember, Darren, the story they told? They're sleeping underneath the seats, and they an old bus that was, I can't remember. It was like a what the hell?
So I don't know if you're able to follow everything that's going on.
I can't follow any of this shit.
But
I'm giving you this heartfelt, sincere, dialogue of poor Al, his brother passing away.
Adika's trying to get me to comment on DLR's sexuality, which he usually does. And so that's part one of what's going on. I stand ground that Dave is asexual, which you can't get sued for saying that somebody's asexual because that's not a defamatory kind of statement. Asexual. Calling somebody.
So calling someone an incel, aren't those all the people that shoot up the schools and stuff?
Allegedly. No, I'm kidding.
Asexual is you're not attracted to anybody.
I think that he had his fun, and then he kind of realized he didn't want to deal with any drama, so he doesn't really have a use for a long
Asia and got a little boy to hang out with.
That's the rumor that a lot of people say, and I've never seen any proof. I just hear people saying that. I just think that he's he's very independent. He doesn't like friends. He doesn't like relationships. So he just uses what he needs to use when he needs to use it. And that's our Davey. But the other thing that's going on is
Was
apparently
he at any of those freak offs? Was he with P. Diddy at any of those freak? Come on, Davey. Yeah,
I
Darren, you
wouldn't
know. Come on.
I wouldn't be shocked because I have a friend who
Diddy,
was
how are you?
Diddy's guitar player at Diddy's peak. And
Yeah.
that friend, he got paid really well. Like he played on It's All About the Benjamins and some rock remixes and all that. He didn't run into Diddy for a number of years. He's just a corny white dude guitar player. And then he ran into Diddy at a studio, and Diddy was inviting him to a Hamptons white party. One of those where everyone has to wear all white attire. So I think everyone got invited to these things. The question is if they got to the VIP level or the like inside the party.
So you're not saying Dave was not at any of these?
No,
Well, I'm
there's
sure if he's David Lee Roth, he can get to whatever. I don't think anyone's turning him down. Right?
okay. If you were to search for David Lee Roth photos on the wire services like Associated Press and all that kind of stuff, there's a number of things at him at private Hamptons events. Diddy's stuff, I think, was largely Hamptons, or at least some of it was Hamptons. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Now, the other thing that's going on is Derek Sherinian, who is Adika's.
Here's a picture of oh wait, no. I googled Diddy and David Lee Roth, but it's actually a picture not of Diddy. It's like a picture of. Yeah, no, that's
what have I started?
You'd think that would if they were ever together, there would have been a picture.
You know, Suge Knight was he was on a podcast talking about P. Diddy's an informant, and he just pissed off the wrong person, and they finally just said, "Okay,
that's believable."
All that shit you did.
The things that we now know that Sean Combs is being accused of, there were people floating around saying that stuff, and they were just going, "Oh, those people are crazy. They're high." And it turned out that was true. So it does make you think. But the B story that's going on here is Adika and Dave White were interacting. That apparently Derek Sherinian had blocked Dave White on social media. So I'm waiting to see if Derek has unblocked Dave White because Adika is working on that. Do we have now Google Roth and Dateline? No. I think everyone's just trying to get us sued.
Look what I've started. Jesus Christ.
I think Dave loves who he wants to love. Dave said Derek's block could have been a sympathy block with Wolfgang. That's true. Wolfgang has blocked a lot of people. I'm surprised I haven't been blocked by Wolfgang. Adika, was this at the backyard party? I really think we're going down.
They're getting ready because I've heard this story before. It was either on the phone or in person when they were planning the party, and he said, "Oh, David Lee Roth. Oh, he's a word I can't say on. I don't want to get your YouTube demonetized."
That word is great guy. He's a great guy.
Yes.
And we celebrate his entire catalog.
Well, I, for the record, I think P. Diddy should be in prison just for murdering music for the past 30 fucking years. That guy was a terrible rapper. I'm sorry, but
yeah, he didn't write
Tupac, he was no Biggie, and he was no. I'm not a huge Jay-Z fan, but I love Pac and Biggie, and it's just like he was not anything close to those.
Yeah, wasn't he more of just a producer so much? I mean, he only had a couple songs. It was more like a producer and a business guy. And
he's got like a ton of hit singles, right? There, and I think he's got the single about Biggie after he died, the one that samples Every Breath You Take.
Yeah,
that was a huge hit. So yeah, I mean, yeah, well, what was the one he did with Jimmy Page?
Come with me from the Godzilla soundtrack.
Yeah,
which sampled Kashmir. But he had a ton of hits. But what somebody had told me when I was working at Viacom, because they had to clear a lot of stuff for MTV and VH1, is they were not smart about the samples. Like they were doing them, before and putting them out in some cases before they cleared them. So they were
Speaking of
kind of,
publishing, right?
so they were getting reamed big time on it. So supposedly on the No Way Out album, the Big Diddy album, like 103% of the publishing was allocated, meaning they were losing money on every unit sold. Based on the samples and
but he hasn't had a top 40 hit since 2010.
Okay.
He had a number one album or two.
He did have a good run from 2000, was like 90. So yeah, from 97 to 2, he had like 13 years of like, I guess there was more than I thought, but yeah.
Yeah. And then he just became like a business mogul the last
production.
Years.
Was he the one? 50 Cent did the Vitamin Water, but didn't he have something too? Like, I think he produced a lot of artists or managed artists.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have
blackmailed artists.
A bunch of his drinks. I have to admit it, because as a writer who unboxes things, I've gotten sent a lot of Diddy things.
I would be skeptical to drink anything made by Diddy.
Yeah, man. If you get real sleepy,
weird. It made me pass out. I don't know what the hell happened. What was in that thing?
Before all the charges surfaced, they bought him out of both brands. So one was Ciroc vodka, and I think the tequila was De Leon, Deleon. And I believe there were other brands. I mean, there was the clothing brand Sean John. He had sold Bad Boy to Warner Music Group at a certain point. Then his publishing he had, but I think he was giving back to all of his artists in exchange for signing an NDA a year or two ago. I am not making that up. In other words, here's your publishing. You can't say anything bad about me ever again. And not all the artists took that.
Yeah. I don't know. He's just, somebody's been doing that shit for that long. Again, maybe Suge Knight's got a point. You know, I don't know. This Suge Knight, I don't know if I should believe anything he says, but what about Mark Gus?
Mark Gus was the drummer of Trickster, who's publicly fought with Steve Brown, who everyone gets along with.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve Brown. Brown recently worked with Ace Frehley.
Oh, did you see that fight?
No,
the Ace Steve Brown stuff.
No. Oh, they're not getting along.
I think they're getting along, but Steve Brown can be very, very honest about things, and Ace can be very dishonest. So Steve Brown talked about how much of the album he wrote, and that maybe he played some of the solos and things of that nature. And Ace was trying to diminish that a little bit.
Yeah.
Meaning that I don't think Ace was in the room when that hit 10,000 Volts was written. Like, I think it was somebody else's song, and then another person fixed it, and then Ace added his part to it.
Ace and Vince Neil are coming to the Mohegan Sun.
Whoa.
Steve Brown stinks. We're Trickster, huh? Give it to me good.
I think that there's going to have to be a part 2, and Adika is going to have to be on camera to clear the air. That's what I'm learning.
Let's do a part 2.
Yeah, crap free.
We'll have a list of like who does Adika like.
Okay, real quick. Before we leave, what do you predict from Diamond Dave in 2025? Will he return to the stage? Ace and Vince Neil. I wrote the quick little article when he did the Panama thing, and I said, is he trying to hint at a return?
I think that my prediction is we'll continue to see these random 2 or 3 day bursts or binges of new content on social media that have no backing related with Tony Basil. Yeah. Oh my God.
I say yes. I say, why not? If those guys get bored, he's going to get bored and he's going to do something. He'll do some sort of project or Vegas cabaret show or something. He'll just, I don't know what it is, but he'll be back on stage in some capacity.
All right. What do you think,
corporate gigs? Well, I think we'll see a couple more of these corporate gigs with Steve Stevens and those kinds of people. as long as the money's right. But I don't think that we're going to see any kind of a residency. I don't think we're going to see 90-minute shows. I think he's only capable of coming up and doing 2 or 3 songs that he's done thousands of times before. Do you disagree?
I think that's what we're looking at. I would like to see him return in some way, shape, or form. I think we all need a little Diamond Dave in our lives. But yeah, I yeah, well,
more as you can see, Eric is doing the thing, which I think Tony Basil choreographed. So
Steve Stevens looks like an old housewife from Goodfellas.
Jesus Christ.
All right, that wins. Let's go out on a high note.
That's it. Oh man,
I respect the hell out of Steve Stevens.
I love Dave.
But I think
oh god, that was a good one. You gotta love Adika.
Adika, we're gonna do a part 2 with you. I think we're all getting sleepy and loopy.
I gotta go eat dinner. My dinner is ready. So
we need an Ariel Levy like Darren with David Lee Roth. You guys do a.
We believe you won't hold back, but thank you for preparing with
why,
us.
Like that came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with anything. That was the best part. I was like, we're not even talking about Steve Stevens, but somehow he made a comment. Like, it's great. All right.
Steve Schneider from Rockaway, Queens.
Yenta Claus, Steve Stevens.
Chuck, Eric.
All right, guys.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Love your work. Thank you for your time and looking forward to what you've got coming. Thanks to everybody for still watching. Adika, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
See you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Take care.